Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sporting Max, where today we are joined by the Boston Celtics scout, Benas Matkevicius, and NBL pro expert analyst, Santamaria. Welcome to the podcast, guys. How you going?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Good to be back with you, and an honor to be joined by Benas.
Now, what's happening for you guys in basketball at the moment, and what's exciting you?
Be my guest, Benas.
For me, it's just scouting from my computer and watching players, watching games. Now the playoffs are coming up, so I'm just trying to get a grip on all the action everywhere around the world, and hopefully we get some good basketball going. Obviously, also getting some information on players leading up to the draft.
What about yourself, Liam?
Well, Max, for me, it's busy. You know, it's 4 weeks out from the end of the regular season here, and it's been, it's been a long season. It was such a long off season last year as we worked towards this NBL season, and we're finally just a few weeks out from what's going to be a really exciting playoff series. So we're just right in that playoff push now. A bunch of teams fighting it out for a top 4 finish and gearing up for a big finals.
Now, international basketball, the Olympics are coming up. Now, Australia qualified and they beat the USA in Melbourne back in 2019. But in late June, in around a month's time or so, Benas, you guys are at Lithuania, going to be playing on home soil for one of 4 remaining spots at the Olympics. How are you guys at Lithuania shaping up for these qualifiers?
Yeah, big pressure, big pressure coming up, but I like to call it good stress, because you know the cause you're doing it for, you know why you're doing it. You know we all should consider ourselves fortunate to be in this situation, to be fighting for the Olympics and to be participating there. So hopefully we have all our guys healthy and ready to go once the season finishes, and we'll have some fun with it, hopefully. So it's going to be a challenge to get the guys ready in a short notice, short time period. So we'll get together with the coaching staff on that and hopefully get everybody on the same page ASAP.
Now, firstly, Liam, Andrew Bogut released his 15-man team for the Olympic squad for the Aussies via his Rogue Bogues podcast. What are your thoughts on the Australian team with so many quality players coming into this Olympics?
It's going to be a really hard selection to make. As you say, there's a lot of quality that's going to be involved, and he and his coaching staff are going to need to make some really tough calls. Bogues was saying in that podcast that they're going to take 15 to the camp in the States, in Las Vegas in preparation. And then from there, going to need to cut 3 guys to get a team of 12. Now that's going to be a really difficult process, because there's going to be some really good players miss out on that 15. And then of course, heartbreak hometown when it comes to that final selection. Now I was I can't remember exactly the guys that he had in his squad, but I was on board for the most part with the group that he'd put together. I really liked the idea of including Josh Giddey as a young guy at the end of the bench. I mean, he's going to play a big part in the future of that program over the journey. And he has also shown no fear with stepping out at the professional level against grown men and performing to a really high standard. So I think having him involved is a really good idea. And I think some of the tough calls are going to need to be made as well on the wings when it comes to guys like Ryan Broekhoff, who hasn't really been setting the world alight in recent times, Chris Golding, these types of guys. Who are you going to have in those final spots on the wings? And then also up front, when you look at guys like Will Magnay, Isaac Humphries, who are you going to have as your last couple of bigs? Even Xavier Cooks, who I know Bogues had in that mix. And we're going to have a really good team no matter which way it lands. And hopefully, from my perspective, the Lithuanian team wins their way through, because the battles between Australia and Lithuania over the journey have just been epic, absolutely epic. And I mean, Benas, I want to ask you, I mean, how have you enjoyed that rivalry between Lithuania and Australia over the years?
Well, I can tell you, I joined the national team in 2013, and we've been playing with Australia, whether it's friendlies or actual competition, ever since. Because Coach Lemanis at that time, he came over with the team to Lithuania several times for camp and prepare, and was I've witnessed, or I was fortunate to watch the evolution of Australian basketball throughout those years, and the impact. Coach Lemanis during that time, he grew that team into a very sophisticated system, and it took a while for them to get on the same page. And I thought from watching them play every summer, because Patty Mills was a huge part of what they did also every summer. They had always a good counteraction to every defensive scheme you put up against them. So it was very, very difficult to defend because of the widespread talent they had, and also the efficient offense they ran with off ball cutting, and it was very difficult to defend. But I thought that 2016 was what they were at their peak and really deserved the medal.
Yeah.
And in Rio, it was very, very heartbreaking to watch, because you've seen it, or I've seen it from basically from the ground up, how they groomed the system. And in my opinion, they deserved that medal in 2016. Yeah, it was a difficult game to watch, and from even though it was a high level game and high level competition, and both teams played really good, but just for the sake of their style of play, and how fit and how everybody was on the same page at the peak of their careers, it felt like they deserved that medal from the outside. So that was a little bit unfortunate.
Now looking forward to the Olympic experience at Tokyo, Benas, assuming you guys get through these qualifiers coming up, what excites you most about going to the Olympics?
Well, it's always like you can't compare Olympics to World Championships or Eurobaskets, because those competitions are usually just about the competition. It's just about winning and being in the Eurobasket and playing for the title. But the Olympics, it feels like best of both worlds. You're kind of happy to be a part of it, and it's also this emotional gratification you get of being there with all the athletes and all the coaches and just other different nations all around the world. And the other part is you get to compete as well at the highest level, and that's like the experience of being there and being part of it, being in the village, and the experience of really fighting for a medal and playing against the best competition possible. It's just unfortunate there won't be any fans that could be a part of it as well, and that's always a little bit a downer when you don't have anybody in the stands, which is this past season has been normality for most of the leagues.
Now, guys, what are your thoughts on the NBA season so far?
Go ahead.
Well, to be honest, Max, I've been pretty selective, pretty focused in my kind of consumption of the NBA this season, because of the time frame of our NBL season this year. It's very much kind of completely overlapped, and I guess I'm so busy on the week to week in an NBL context, it's kind of hard to take in much else. So I've had to be pretty selective. I'm a long time Phoenix Suns fan, so that's been the key kind of element of enjoyment for me this year, is watching our team win a whole bunch of games. I mean, we've not been in the playoffs for over a decade, so to be second in the West, and have a great point guard at the helm in Chris Paul, and watch the continued growth of our young stars in Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. That's been really fun. We've got an NBA connection now on that team with Torrey Craig, so that's another fun element of that for me. And then the other part that I've been enjoying watching is watching our Aussies and our NBL alum performing at a really high level in the NBL. You look at a guy like Joe Ingles, the incredible shooting season he's having on a really, really tough, really good Utah team that plays a really nice brand of basketball. And then heck, just some of the things that we've seen even today. You know, you see a guy like Cam Oliver on a 10-day deal come from the NBL, come out for the Rockets today, put 17 points on the board and really make a statement. You see a guy like Didi Luzada, fresh off the NBL hardwood, come out and make his NBL debut. He's out there guarding Luka Doncic. So they're the kind of things I've been watching this season and enjoying.
Liam, how long do you think Cam Oliver's going to be? Do you think he's going to stick around the NBA longer than that 10-day period?
Well, that'll be the end of the regular season for him. It'll be all wrapped up from there. I don't think we're going to see him back in the NBL. Sadly for Taipans fans, sadly for those of us who enjoy watching him on the week to week in this league, but really happily for him. You know, he's just been really dying for this kind of opportunity to get out there in regular season NBA games and show them what he can do. He is that kind of talent. And I think his time in the NBL has served him really well to sort of develop his understanding of some of the finer points of the game and how he can exist in a positive way within a team environment. And so to see him out there now doing what he's done over the last couple of days, I think he'll get snapped up on a deal for next year, and he'll join that club, that ever-growing club of guys who have spent time in the NBL who are going to be playing and carving out a career on the big stage.
Now, Benas, what are your thoughts on the current NBA season?
It's been, I think, very congested, to say the least. Lots of games. I think it's been difficult for a lot of teams. I know for us it has been really challenging with all the injuries and all the just missing pieces we had throughout the year. So the consistency, I think, in a lot of teams was probably lacking throughout the season. You can see across the board it's just been one injury here or there, and then all of a sudden it just throws the whole team for a loop. So for us, that's been the biggest challenge, just really trying to navigate through the season. And once your roster is cut short a little bit, the rotation changes as well, and then that's when you have to really find new guys to step up and contribute in one way or the other. And hopefully you discover somebody that really shows some upside for the playoffs. Like Nesmith has been really like the last month and a half, he's been really on a curving up and really showing some really good flashes of brilliance and hopefully some more contribution in the playoffs. So we'll see how the playoffs will shape up for us, but the season in general has been for us up and down and really frustrating to watch at times. But we all know we can do better, and we all know that Celtic basketball is about more than that. So hopefully we can turn around for the playoffs coming up, or looks like we're going to be in the playing game. So let's see.
So come that NBA playoff time, who do you guys think are the danger teams in the league?
Go ahead, Liam.
Well, I mean, I bow to your expertise, Benas. As I say, I've been in and out in terms of my close watching of the league. So you would know way more than I would at this point. Well,
it's difficult to say because like LA, the Lakers have been also devastated with injuries, so they're a little bit lower than they should be probably. You don't know how the play-in tournament will shape out, who was going to be in it, but looking from the top teams, you can see that probably the road in the East will probably lead through Brooklyn in terms of talent. Philly obviously is there as well, and Milwaukee. Those are probably the top three teams that separate themselves from the rest. And on the West, it's always hard to judge. The West has always been a little bit difficult to take it to really put a finger on it. But you could probably say that the Utah Jazz have been playing really exceptional basketball throughout the whole year and most consistently. So it's going to be interesting to see once they head into the playoffs if they can keep up the play and continue their surge through the West. So it's playoffs are a different animal. Everybody steps up their game and everybody plays with more intensity, a little bit more grit, a little bit more fire, and that's when the cream rises to the top, and that's where the best teams separate themselves. So even the lower teams have a chance if they just have enough talent just didn't get lucky during the regular season, maybe with injuries, and can work themselves up with a road win. So time will tell. But those are the teams I think right now they're probably just on a real different pedestal.
Can I say, Max?
Yep.
That's the second time already in this podcast that Benas has kind of broken my heart here a little bit. Firstly, he talks about the Rio Games and our bronze medal matchup against Spain, which we've all been trying to forget about over here. And then no mention of the Suns there as one of his hot chances in the West. So I need a bit of a pick-me-up.
Well, it's the first year in a while that they've been up there. So I just kind of want to keep the emotions low, not to get too far ahead of yourselves. So it's always good to be the underdog, probably. So less pressure is probably always better when you go into the playoffs. So I think Phoenix will be good.
It's actually an interesting situation, really, isn't it? To be a second seed, which it's highly likely we're going to end up being, and yet we're going to go into first round playoff series most likely with most people feeling that way, as an underdog, considering how long we've been out and how sort of, I think the expectation is that this is a flash in the pan sort of team. Well, not flash in the pan, but this has been a season that's part of the growing process with these kind of young stars. So I'm fascinated to see how we're going to go.
Yeah, it's gonna. I'm curious as well because they play a good brand of basketball, and Monty has been really great with that team building it, and Chris Paul obviously helped a lot to bring everybody together.
How do you feel when you look at the Suns roster, having Devin Booker, and then you've got Chris Paul there to sort of give him experience, and Booker can feed off Chris Paul, and having him such sort of a veteran player in the league, Booker coming into, well, I'd describe coming into sort of his prime years. Now, how do you feel about, the Celtics potentially coming up against the Suns?
Well, that would be remarkable because that would mean the Celtics would be would work their way through the play-in and then right through the East, and we would do not too dissimilarly on the other side of the draw, and then we'd meet in the finals. So we're not going to see that. But on the question about watching this Suns team with Chris Paul at the helm, it's been so much fun because we saw this Phoenix group. And I feel like I've hijacked this conversation and turned it all into the Valley of the Sun. But we saw them play so well in the bubble last year and thought, well, the challenge is going to be to build on that, and to carry that kind of momentum and take it another step the following regular season. And to have been able to do that has been a huge tick for the entire organization. And bringing Chris Paul into the mix obviously has been a massive part of that. And from a Suns fan perspective, it's just another enjoyable ride with a super high level point guard. This is the thing I've enjoyed so much as a former point guard myself. Watching over the years, I became a Suns fan when Charles Barkley moved from the Sixers to the Suns when I was 11 years old. But from there, we had Jason Kidd and Stephen Marbury and Steve Nash and a whole bunch of incredible point guards along the way. Kevin Johnson going back all that way to the early 90s. And then now we've got Chris Paul, and he's leading us right into our first playoff berth in a long time. And his leadership with those guys, it's been a perfect time in their career, those, Booker and Ayton and those guys, to have a guy like Chris Paul with them. And he's been enormous for helping them continue to grow. And then, as Ben has said, under the stewardship and the leadership of Monty Williams, it's just all come together really nicely this season, and can't wait to see what we're going to do in the playoffs.
What are your thoughts on that, Benas? Like, sort of, if there was a Celtics Suns matchup?
Well, like Liam said, it's highly unlikely. I think the Vegas odds would be through the roof on that. But yeah, if we could get that far, it'd be amazing, obviously. But we're decimated with injuries, and hopefully we can get through the play-ins into the playoffs itself. So Phoenix has, like Liam said, Phoenix has been demonstrating really good brand of basketball, and it's fun to watch them play. So hopefully into the playoffs we'll see a much more great basketball from both teams, and hopefully everybody will stay healthy. It just takes one injury that really can, and the season took a toll on a lot of players, a lot of teams. So I think that was the biggest challenge for coaches, to navigate through that and rotate everybody, so everybody goes into the playoffs fresh and recuperate from game to game. So it's going to be challenging for all the teams, and especially for us with the roster thinning out.
Now Australian players made a big impact in the NBA this year, and will in the finals, with Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle up at the top in the East with Philly, while Joe Ingles and the Jazz are up there in the West. What are your thoughts on the impact that Australian players can have in the finals and in the playoffs?
Well, Benas, do you want to go first on that? Have you kept your eye on the Aussie talent around the league?
Well, yeah, the Australian guys. I can't talk too much about particular players, just because of my association with the NBA. But it's in general, the Australian players always have been contributors, and not just players just to be on a roster, but they've actually been contributors on a high level. And I mean, we had Bainesy in Boston for a long time, and he's always been, whichever team he played on, he's always been a really good get, and his toughness always helped. But in general, you can tell that Joe Ingles has been playing a phenomenal season, with his shooting percentages being through the roof all across the board. And the guys you mentioned from Philly are obviously there too. So it's always been. Like we've talked about earlier, I've watched the evolution of Australian basketball since 2013, and I've always been a fan, just because of the way the Aussies play. The tough nosed, gritty basketball. It's also really conducive with Celtic basketball, and it's a good reminder of how good basketball should be played. So I think that Aussies that play on playoff teams and that play on NBA teams, they'll always be contributors and valuable players to their team.
And from my perspective, Max, apart from the Suns, I'm cheering for a Joe Ingles, Ben Simmons showdown in the finals, to be honest. I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, it probably wouldn't be the ideal scenario for our national team in terms of the tight turnaround for them to be able to get involved with our group for the Olympics. But I mean, these are two teams that, very reasonably could achieve that, could make their way through their conference and meet at that level. And that would, of course, guarantee one of those guys at least their first NBA championship ring. So the fact that we've got so many Australian players playing key parts of rotations on championship contending teams is just thrilling for us all to watch down here.
Benas, we know how passionate and, like you mentioned before, you are about Celtics basketball. Can you explain Celtics basketball to us, and are there any elements that in the past you've focused on or sort of like any elements, that kind of thing you've focused on in the lead up to the playoffs?
Well, in general, Celtic basketball always been about grit and grind. On defense, playing tough, playing physical, and holding your ground, guarding your yard. That's what Coach Stevens likes to call it. Guard your yard, and just be physical, be gritty, be tough on the defensive end, and play selfless and team basketball on the offensive end. Make quick decisions, move the ball. Don't find a better shot. You don't just settle for a good shot. Find a better shot and then move on to the best shot if it's attainable. So I think that throughout the season it's just been inconsistent with this play, and I think that's probably going to get better. It's just a matter of time. And hopefully now with the playoffs coming up, we had really good flashes and signs of really good Celtic basketball where we moved the ball. Marcus Smart has been just the guy that you really exemplifies Celtic basketball on both ends, you know. So hopefully everybody can rub off that a little bit more, and hopefully going into the playoffs we have that grit and grind mentality.
Now, if we switch to the NBL, the NBL sort of brought in the Next Stars program at the start of NBL 20 to sort of give players a pathway to the NBA. And I've recently had NBL Commissioner Jeremy Loliga on the podcast, and he spoke about the positive impact in which this program's had on the NBL, and he spoke and helping players get to the NBA. Can you chat to us about the players that have been going through the program and who've made a splash in the NBA this season?
Of course. Well, I mean, of the biggest name of all is LaMelo Ball, isn't it? Because you know, he's the guy who really brought all the eyeballs onto our league and onto the Next Stars program across the globe last year. He was tremendous in his 12 games in the NBL. He was here for a good time, not a long time, but he was really terrific in our league, and then has, you know, of course, went pick number 3 in the most recent NBA draft and has been outstanding in his rookie campaign for the Charlotte Hornets this year. And again, just like how I spoke about Cam Oliver, I feel the same way about Didi Luzzatto, who we'll talk about in a moment. And as I do with LaMelo, in terms of, I really feel like his time in the NBL helped him tremendously as a stepping stone towards the NBA. And not just helping him to improve his draft stock so that he went as high as possible in the draft, but in preparing him as a player, because, you know, it really doesn't matter where you get drafted if when you step out onto the NBA floor, you can't get it done. You can't play with guys, you're not coachable, and you can't compete at that level and continue to grow. And he certainly has been able to do all of those things. So that's been spectacular. RJ Hampton was the other big name that was with LaMelo Ball in the program last year. And we're really seeing some fabulous signs from him late in the season, having moved
at the Magic.
Yeah, having moved from Denver to Orlando. I kind of was excited for what an early few years in the league at Denver could do for RJ, learning within a winning system there and under a really good coach, and under the mentorship of some high-level players. But at the same time, there's nothing that like opportunity and the chance to get out on the floor and actually play. And he's had that in Orlando and done really well. So that's been terrific. And of course, prior to those two, we had Brian Bowen in the Next Stars program, who of course was with the Sydney Kings and has been spending time in the Indiana Pacers organization. And he was really the starting point. We had Terrence Ferguson in the league just prior to that with the Adelaide 36ers, when he got drafted, of course, by Oklahoma City. But he wasn't specifically a part of the Next Stars program. It wasn't quite in existence at that point. And then the flip side of all of that is these other guys that have recently been eligible for the Next Stars program as draft and stash players. Didi Luzzatto, a tremendous example of that, played a season and I'm going to say a season and a half here with the Sydney Kings, caught up by the Pelicans and made his debut today. And of course, Justinian Jessup, who is with the Illawarra Hawks right now as a draft pick from the Golden State Warriors. And then a couple of other names, of course, Josh Giddey, who has just recently had his 3rd triple-double of the season. He's going to be one of the youngest guys in the upcoming draft and is an incredible talent. And we're excited for what he's going to be able to do at the NBA level. And we're also watching the growth of Mojave King as a Next Star in our league right now. And there's a you know, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with him in the next little while, whether he is indeed going to, you know, throw his name in and nominate for the upcoming draft, whether he's going to, if he does, whether he keeps it in or whether he decides to spend another year. He certainly has that opportunity to do that. And if he does, well, will that be in the NBL or will that be elsewhere? And then looking forward, Max, I'm excited about who might be a part of the next batch of Next Stars. I'm really hopeful Dyson Daniels, a really promising young Aussie point guard from Victoria here, is going to jump on board as part of the program next season. And if he does, who else will come with him? So it's added a really exciting, different element to our league that previously wasn't in existence, that has created a whole bunch of attention and eyeballs and excitement around the competition.
Benas, with the success of this Next Stars program, how's the program viewed by the NBA and by scouts?
Well, everybody's hoping that Australia can open up finally, so everybody can come and scout the players from Australia. It's in general, I think it's viewed as a really, really good program, just because it's always good when young talents get to play against professionals, with professionals, against professionals, grown men in the grown men's league, in the highly professional league. So it's a good opportunity for them to all showcase their talent at a really high level, and that's when you separate the cream rises to the top once again, and then you'll see if they're able to improve throughout the season, if they're getting better and more consistent with their play. And everybody's watching them. It's not just because we can't travel, we're not watching them. This coronavirus has changed our way of working, but it doesn't mean that we're not seeing anybody like we used to. So this program is good just for that, for all the young guys to showcase their talent at a professional level, and that's what it goes down to.
Liam, is there anyone in, I guess, the NBL who you want to pitch to Benas that may not be on the NBA scouts radar?
Well, that's a good question. Who may or may not be on their radar? That's an interesting question. Well, look, certainly we saw a guy like Isaac Humphries playing at a very high level at the start of this season. He may have fallen off NBA radars over the last little while, perhaps. We know he played obviously in the NBA G League for a period of time, and then had a cup of coffee with the Atlanta Hawks. But the way he started this season before he got hurt and had to miss the whole middle part of the year was tremendous. I mean, he was performing at an MVP level. And look, if you're a young player performing at an MVP level in a league as good as this, then you should be well and truly on those kind of radars. And he has a developing NBA skill set in terms of he's an elite shot blocker, leading the league in block shots at 3 or so a game. Makes good reads as a rolling target in pick and roll actions, and has certainly shown in recent times the ability to step out and shoot the ball. I mean, he hit 3 triples in their most recent win, Adelaide, against Sydney. So that's a guy I think deserves some more NBA looks, maybe a chance to go back to Summer League and show a little bit more of what he can do. And then, of course, the other guy is Jock Landale, who has yet to play and achieve his NBA dream, has been playing at a really high level in Europe over a period of time, was with the Boomers at the World Championships in 2019, and has been tremendous in this league this season. And he hasn't really had the chance to put up the kind of numbers that maybe some other guys around the competition have, because from the moment the season tipped off, he has just been demanded an incredible level of defensive attention, game in, game out. And that's the thing that I've really loved about how he's approached the season this year, is he's happy to just catch it in the block, invite the double, pitch it out. He's got talented offensive players around him. That ball goes kick, kick, kick around the perimeter, wide open 3 on the other side of the floor. And you watch him when those shots go down. He gets nothing in the box score, but he's just as happy when that teammate knocks that shot down as he is when his front court partner grabs the offensive rebound on the other side of the rim and throws it down. He's a genuine team player. And you combine that with what is undoubtedly an NBA skill set and a body that I think he has turned in recent years into a genuine NBA level body as well. So he deserves a chance as well. And he deserves a guaranteed contract, really. I mean, I would be surprised if he wants to go through the Summer League route which he's done previously. He's a guy that I think NBA teams should be looking at as someone to bring into their organization and build with.
What about what? I'll go, Benas. Yep.
Yeah, because the summer league is so late this year, it's going to be hard for successful international players to come over and showcase their talent in a summer league setting, which is understandable. Like after a successful season, you really, because it's so late, it's really close to the start of the next season. It's really going to be hard to put the teams together. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for the NBA teams in terms of inviting European players or international players in general. Yeah, and it's always when you're playing on a winning team and playing in a winning environment with really good players around you, the stats are not going to jump out at you, and that's one thing that like Liam said, it's always important to see what impact they have on winning without really having a phenomenal box score. So that's why it's very important to watch those guys throughout the season, and not only one game or a couple clips here and there, highlights, but you really to follow up on them throughout the season and see and feel the impact that the players have, and that's possible only through watching full games, watching the impact they have in the game, which whether it's a hockey assist, whether it's just setting a good screen, diving on the ball that doesn't show up, and making the right basketball play. And I think that's really what separates the guys that are really next level players.
I want to touch on Shyla Hill. Taken at the 8th pick in the WNBA draft to Chicago Sky. Liam, tell us a bit about Shyla Hill.
Well, she's a really exciting talent. You talk about young Australian exciting talent. You're right. You've done exactly the right thing in bringing her name up, because boy, didn't she blow up in the most recent WNBL season? Was unbelievable for Townsville under Shannon Seabaum, and took that team right to a grand final appearance. Of course, their opponents were far too good, and we're always going to get that win. But she was just sensational. It was no surprise to see her be a top 10 pick. She, of course, Benas, you would know, she's the daughter of Aussie basketball legend Shane Hill.
Does he shoot it like him?
She shoots it. She doesn't look the same, but she shoots a kind of clip like he used to shoot. She doesn't kind of go left.
I hope she won't put the hair up and dye it white.
Different hair, different stroke, same mentality.
Okay.
Same, no backward step mentality, no matter who she's playing against. She's tough, she's hard-nosed, she's super competitive like her old man, but she's also really skilled. He's put a lot of time and effort into working with her over a long period of time. She's just been really hungry to put in that kind of work. Right. And I think she's ready to go over. And I think she's landed in a really nice spot there in Chicago. She's got an outstanding point guard to learn under for a period of time. So she'll be able to kind of make the most of that. And she is set for a spectacular WNBA and international career. And can't wait to watch it all play out 10 and plus years.
Awesome.
Benas, how has COVID changed the way in which you go about scouting, and have there been any positives that have come out of it that you will keep doing post-COVID?
Well, like in general, COVID has not had much positive at all. But it's the one thing I can say that I probably value is probably traveling less. I probably value that more now than I did before. I love to travel. I love to see games live. I love to meet people. I love to socialize, and that's one thing that I'm really missing in terms of just talking to people, meeting people, and talking in person. I think it has a much different value and much different feel to it. Like it's not the same when you're talking via Zoom or phone in general. But I feel like I could cut down on the travel just to be more efficient and not just to travel around just to see games, just to meet people, and then all of a sudden I'm exhausted the weeks afterwards. and the work that I would be doing at home would not be as efficient, as I'm doing it now. So I think that I start valuing balance a little bit more, just to balance the travel and the work at home a little bit better, and to be a little bit more selective with the travel that I will be doing in the future. I think that's probably the biggest lesson that I took away. Yeah, just being really grateful for appreciating when you do see people. I'm a hugger. I say I'm personal, but I like to hug people. I like to feel people, and I'm an intuitive communicator. So I go I bounce off of other people when I talk to them, and that's one thing that's really missing. But working from home is now different, just because, well, now I'm in a hotel. It's completely different. Anyways, but it's a little bit. Watching guys on tape has a different value, so you see the development, you see some certain things, but it's not as much fun as watching it in live, obviously. But it has other advantages. You can watch more games at once. You can make more phone calls, you can have more emails. You're not constantly on the road and task switching all the time while you're traveling. That makes it difficult. Like, I used to have to download games to be able to watch them on the plane, and just organizing myself ahead of time. Now it's just kind of like where you wake up, you have your schedule, you have the things you want to do. I do one thing after another throughout the day, and have tasks that I want to finish for myself, because you can't be doing everything at once in one day. So sometimes I have to really be selective of, all right, today I'm going to do one phone call for a GM or sports director. I'm going to learn one new player that I really want to learn, either from college or from international point that I just want to follow up on. And then I'll watch one full game or two full games, depending on who played the night before, and prepare myself to know the context of the team. Because in order to know the player, you also have to know the context of the team, of which he's playing for, in order to know his role, his impact, and the rotation, the trust that coaches have in them, and things like that. So I try to learn throughout the day different things around the player, and that's that. Whereas before, I was just, I made my schedule. That a lot of time went into scheduling, booking hotels, making sure I have the tickets, making sure I have the flights set up, and there's a lot of pre-organizing that went into it. And then afterwards, there was a lot of receipts that had to be turned in as well. So I also had to do the books also for my own sake, and that's also taken away, which is good. It's less time consuming now to worry about receipts and scheduling. So that's also positive, I guess.
Liam, as Benas mentioned, COVID's had a massive impact. As one of Australia's leading basketball analysts, how's it impacted what you do?
Look, to be honest, it hasn't had a massive impact on my day to day or my week to week, Max. To be honest, we as a well, the broadcasters of the NBL made the decision ahead of the 2019-20 season here to move into an off-site broadcasting arrangement where we call every game of the NBL season from a Harbour studio set up here in Melbourne. We have one kind of courtside commentator at each game, as you would know, Max, but the commentators in the booth, the play-by-play and the analysts, are all calling from a hub in Melbourne. And a lot of sports have made that adjustment to broadcasting games that way as a result of COVID. Well, in our league, that adjustment was made prior to COVID for, best practice reasons from a financial perspective. So the fact that we were already set up, we were already doing it like that, meant that when we continued to do that throughout COVID or into this season, it didn't kind of change things for us. And then over and above that, the rest of my work, a lot of it is done. A lot of it is done from home, all my writing and my studying of teams and players and what they're doing and have been doing hasn't changed a lot. Over the off season, of course, we shot NBL Overtime, our kind of flagship panel show that I'm a part of from home in this sort of type of way, which was very different. One moment I've got my hands in the sink, elbow deep in the dishes, and then the next I'm shooting a national TV show. Whereas now we're back in the studio, and that's kind of feels a little bit better. And then the other part of that's been affected, of course, is our NBL season. We're operating during the winter period of time now. We're going up against some of the really big players in the sporting landscape here in Australia in terms of the AFL football, the rugby league and the like. I mean, we as a league made the call many moons ago to no longer go up against those codes, to move our season into the summer here and try to become the number one Australian summer sport. That's had a big impact, and it's been really difficult. It's been difficult for teams, and that's just one of a number of things. The constant changing of the schedule. We've gone from 3 imports down to 2 imports this season as a cost cutting measure, and as a result of COVID. So look, to be honest, we're really, I'm really looking forward. I think there's going to be a tremendous run home, as I mentioned before, and a great playoff series. But then moving forward, I'm really hoping we can get back to something resembling a bit more of a normal NBL season moving forward. It won't change a lot from my perspective in terms of what I do, but in terms of just continuing the momentum of the growth of this league, getting back in a summer, 3 imports, back into that period of time where we're one of the biggest players in the sporting landscape. I think is going to be a real positive.
Now on Tuesday, and I mentioned this before, to Benas, I had a conversation with Derek Rucker, and that'll release in a month or so. The great Derek Rucker, about the NBL top 4 this season, and I was trying to name a top 4, but then you get stuck on that 3rd and 4th spot because there's 2. So Cairns and New Zealand pretty much they're out of it. But then you've got your Adelaide, Southeast Melbourne, the Phoenix, the Bullets. You've got like 5 or 6 teams in there who can potentially make and a late run. I think the Adelaide, the 36ers have to win every game for the rest of the season to make the playoffs. Achievable, but difficult. But we were going on about this for about 5 or so minutes. Was checking out the stats and checking out and we were sort of debating who should be in there and whatnot. Liam, who's your top 4 going to be?
Well, let me guess. I'm gonna imagine that Ruck threw the Bullets in there as a team that ultimately will make the 4. I mean, I know where his loyalties lie up there in Southeast Queensland. Look, it's going to be fascinating to see what kind of run they can make. Benas, of course, they are coached by Andre Lamanis, and they've announced already that he's not going to be with the team moving forward at the end of this season. So it's an interesting kind of state of affairs. It's not a sort of a usual situation for them. They brought in Lamar Patterson mid-season. What kind of run can they make down the stretch of this season? Do they play with all the weight of the world off their shoulders, knowing, and does Andre kind of coach with a freedom of mind that comes with that kind of announcement and feeling? We'll see. I think they're a good chance to make some noise. I think they're going to come up short, to be honest. I think Adelaide, with apologies to 36ers fans who are super passionate, they can continue to dream the dream if they want, but that's not going to happen. So to me, I think it comes down to Sydney, Southeast Melbourne, and Illawarra for those final 2 spots in the 3rd and 4th spot. We saw the Phoenix last night get over the line against the New Zealand Breakers. They play Cairns again this round. I think they're going to get that win. They'll be 16-14 at that point. They're winding Kiefer Sykes back up as their premier point guard. And, we saw some good signs from Mitch Creek last night. I think Ryan Broekhoff has a chance to have a good last part of the season as well. I think they're going to make it. And then the other team I think will make it with it will be the Sydney Kings. Have been unbelievably banged up all year long, but they're getting Xavier Cooks back. He is set to make his NBL 21 debut tonight.
Yep.
I'll be calling that game between the Kings and the Bullets.
Yep.
So excited to see him back out there on the floor. And look, Illawarra, I think that they're going to go right down to the wire as well. They've got a bunch of home games. Brian Gorgian is, of course, the greatest to ever do it on the sidelines in our league, and he's going to have that team right in the mix. But look, they're young. They've got some young guys like Sam Froling playing a really big load of minutes. And I think that to expect them to get it all right down the stretch is maybe a little difficult, especially when you think they're essentially an expansion team, new ownership, new coach, almost an entire new roster coming into this year. So I think they'll go close, but no cigar, and it'll be Melbourne, Perth, Sydney, Southeast Melbourne, and we'll be good to go.
Benas, I know you love your podcast, and I know you've recently started your own podcast named the Benas Podcast. Can you talk to us about this?
Yeah, very creative name, huh?
Yeah.
How long did that take?
That was it took longer than it sounds like it, really. Because I had a lot of ideas from coast to coast, coffee with coaches. I mean, I had a whole bunch of ideas for it, but my idea was to travel around the world. And honestly, because we can't travel as much, I was thinking to travel and meet people in terms of sports specific people, and not only basketball, but in general sports, and pick their brains on different nuances of their sports. Because first topic is about the person, of their path, because I get often asked, how did I get to this point? And the reality is that everybody's journey is different. Everybody has their own path to blaze and to run through and to get to where they want to get to. And there's not one way of getting there. It's just your specific way that you find throughout your life. And the other part is the professional part, where I talk to the basketball world, and I had a mental coach on as well. But in general, I try to pick their brains on certain situations that I've experienced being in a team environment, where you deal with certain nuances of how to connect with players, certain challenges you have throughout the season, chemistry stuff, anything that's really involved with coaching, X's and O's, but not so much going into tactics, but how to communicate amongst the staff, how to really grow loyalty amongst the staff. What do you do? What's certain things the head coaches look for in assistant coach, what they expect from the assistant coaches during the game, during practices, and certain nuances and details that maybe not many people think about, that I've experienced are more challenging than they sound like. That you really have to navigate certain information between the player and the head coach, as an assistant coach being right in between the two. So there's lots of little things that you have to be wary of. And I am on a journey to really explore that with different people from different sports and see how they reach the peak. And in reality, I would like to know, put the different sports worlds together and see what drives winning, and that's, in the end of the day, that's what's interesting, I think, to what I can uncover for people to know more about.
Thanks, Liam and Benas, for coming on the podcast today and putting aside an hour or so of your time to come on and have a chat. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Max. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Max. And Max, I'm sure Benas would agree with me. You keep up the great work, young man. You are just you're incredible, and you're doing an incredible job with this podcast and everything you're doing in the sporting landscape at such a young age. You handle yourself just brilliantly, and it's a pleasure to come on and chat with you.
Thanks,
and
Liam.
Max, in one way or another, you really also inspired me to do my podcast. So you started the Benas podcast in reality.
Thanks, guys. Stay tuned,
All right.
everyone, for some more sporting, Max.